will give the ball to McClendon. He leaps. Oh! He doesn't get in. He fumbled the football. Carolina holds. The game is over. And Carolina has won the game.
With 5 seconds, he's going to throw it. Howard leaps. He has it. Touchdown. Carolina back from the dead to tie the game with 2 seconds to go. There is a flag down, but holy smokes.
2 and 4 in overtime games. Carolina 1 and 3. Here from under center. Give off to Greg Little. Little pulls away. Little is going to score. Carolina wins.
Snap back, spot down. The kick is cleanly away. It is good!
And it's
with
yes,
a 54-yard field goal. And how about them Tar Heels? They do it!
Possible win. Snap, spot, kick away, high enough, long enough. It's good! It's good! Carolina has won the game on a 42-yard field goal by freshman Connor Barnes.
In his end zone. The punt, very high. Switzer will have room to return it. He fields it at the 40. Coming near side, Switzer at the 50. Switzer, 45, cuts back at the 40. 35, breaks a tackle at the 30. Still on his feet. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Ryan Switzer for 6. He is doing his best Giovanni Bernard impression. Ryan Switzer again. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? It is the Heel Tough blog, fellas. And that's right. We are back. We are on camera for the first time in what feels like forever. And how could we not be after one of the most exciting wins in recent memory? And to be honest with you, probably one of the most exciting wins that we've ever seen under Mack Brown at Carolina. It's got to rank up there near the top. And so we had to get back on video. We also, have spent a little bit of our own money. They're actually paying us now. That's new. So, but as you see below, it's a little bit of a different layout. Remember the last time we did this, there were some different, podcast groups that were at the bottom. Now, those are some pretty good brands to have at the bottom, and we really do appreciate them for having us. But now we feel like it's time to take it to the video side of things with football season officially back. And we start tonight recapping the game in Charlotte against the South Carolina Gamecocks. And Josh Marlowe, of course, is here with me as always to recap what was just an unbelievable win for the Tar Heels. And it has to start. There's only one way that it can start, with me apologizing to the team that I have loved for the better part of, let's see now, probably about 16, 17 years now. I did not believe that they would find a way to win this game. I believed all the hype. I listened to way too many South Carolina people that told me that this team was going to build off of the momentum last year. I was concerned, about some of the stuff that I heard from Carolina coming out, especially that there was still some weaknesses along the offensive line, that there were some weaknesses on special teams. But I'll be damned if this team didn't come out and prove to every single one of us that while, look, this is, there's still some things that they have to clean up. This is a team that is much, much better already than a year ago on the defensive side of the football. And I think that's the biggest thing that you have to take away. I know it's only one game. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, look, pump the brakes a little bit. But that type of performance, it's hard not to get excited by what you saw in Charlotte on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was something that, there was reason to be doubtful about this team just because of the history and the track record. But as I said going in, it's put up or shut up time for Mack Brown and his staff and this team after a 9-1 start, 4 straight losses to end last year. That's all we heard, and a good chance to finally put that behind you was to go out there and beat a team that you're very evenly matched with. And there's a lot of reason why South Carolina got a lot of hype entering the year. There's a scenario where they could be a good football team this year and the record not show it. But what Carolina did on Saturday was they didn't just beat them. They dominated them, and they controlled the game. And, we had a lot of arguments a year ago about a 9-1 football team because
No, come on.
Yeah, because I didn't believe that it was I didn't think that it was real. And the 4-game losing streak validated that. And the biggest reason why I said that a year ago was they didn't do what they did on Saturday. They played inferior opponents last year, and they never took control of the game. Carolina took control of the game in that third quarter. And even though Drake May threw 2 interceptions, the defense didn't fold. They made play after play, and they did what they are capable of doing and what they're going to need to do if they want to continue to earn and garner respect nationally.
Yeah, I mean, it all really started, I think, up front, and that's the thing that we got to talk about the most here is that, look, this team a year ago, that was probably the worst defensive front that we've seen in maybe in Tar Heel history. I mean, it's hard. You'd have to go back through just so much, and they don't really keep the records of sacks, up until 2000, which was when the NCAA officially started keeping them. And the reason that I know that offhand is because that was the best performance that Carolina has had outside of one game back in 2000 against Wake Forest, where they had 10 sacks. That was the most sacks that Carolina's had since the NCAA started keeping record of that stat on a consistent basis. So, I mean, for Carolina to be that productive, 16 tackles for loss. And I think the thing is that, look, you could say, well, South Carolina's offensive line simply just wasn't good. And to be honest with you, that's probably something that we should have read even more into than we did when we talked about it on the podcast. They had 2 guys at the offensive tackle spots that were penciled in as the starters, but they had words next to their name. That should have been a sign right there that their offensive line was not really in great shape. But then, Carolina comes out, and I thought one of the things, you got to give this group a lot of credit as well, this coaching staff a lot of credit. I thought not only did the guys play physical, which is something that has been stressed by Mac Brown and his staff really for the last couple of years, but really this offseason, I think they turned that up even further with it being Gene Chizik's second year and not really trying to focus on getting the understanding, now just trying to execute. I think what you saw the other night was there was more creativity. Like, I felt like last year, a lot of the stuff was just very basic. Remember, Mac Brown talked so much. I don't know if it was last offseason or if it was the offseason before about winning one-on-one matchups. I think it was the offseason before under Jay Bateman. And that was something that seemed to really stick around last year, and they kept talking about that. When really I thought they needed to be a little bit more creative as a staff. Guys needed to, win their one-on-one battles too. But I thought they needed a little bit more creativity. I thought the other night you saw more blitzing, but you also saw, guys that were doing some things a little bit different up front. And I thought that allowed guys to sort of get more comfortable. I think that allowed them to bring out more of the physicality. And I think that's why you saw them have as much success as they did, not only getting to the quarterback, but holding South Carolina to just 11 rushing yards in the game. Something that, look, I think we thought the run defense could be better. 11 yards rushing. I don't know if anybody saw that coming.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know it wasn't on my bingo card for the season opener on Saturday. And, one of the things was that I think having guys in their natural positions, it really showed up on the field. Kamen Rucker dominated South Carolina's offensive line, got, defensive player of the week honors. But that you got a contributions from Des Evans, a guy that, when we got into the stadium, didn't think was going to play. Amari Gaynor made an immediate impact on Saturday night. Miles Murphy was making the type of plays that he's capable of making. And I think the biggest
Bo Atkinson was tremendous too.
It just looked like a team that was actually just more bought in. They believed in what was being taught, what was being preached, what the game plan was going in. And, there was just a point there in the second half where they realized and they can't block us. And we're not going to let up. And that was a really cool thing to see. Because, over the years, we've seen Carolina against inferior fronts get pushed around, get moved around. And there was a time, when you got into halftime, it felt like it was going to be a track meet. It felt like it was going to be probably first one to 35, 41. Whoever had the ball last was going to win the ball game. But Carolina's defense did not allow that to happen. They really took control up front at the line of scrimmage. And that's the thing, man. We said all preseason long, if Carolina wins up front, you got two great linebackers that'll clean up a lot of messes. You've got talent in the secondary. And even though you didn't really see it maybe fully on display on Saturday, Carolina's got dudes that will make plays in the passing game as the season moves along. But it starts up front. And Carolina won up front on Saturday night for the first time in what feels like a long time. And it's not by accident. They put together one of their better defensive performances under Mac Brown 2.0.
Yeah, Sean, who is in here with us, first of all, shouts us out, says, fellas, what's up? Glad that we're back. You can actually see us. I know that's probably not the most aesthetically pleasing thing.
I'm sorry.
But he said, look, he hasn't seen a defensive line play that well since Butch Davis. I kind of thought that same thing. I thought that was, really something. There were some performances early under Larry Fedora where they still had that D-line talent that was there. But I mean, that was the first thought that came to my mind, that it's probably been since then. But I said this, when we were talking about the collection of talent that this defensive line had. Like, this is the best collection of raw talent, just recruiting wise, that they've had since Butch Davis was there. And I think for the first time, we got to see that the other night, which is what has me so excited and really just more relieved for that group to finally put it on film after talking about it so much.
The thing is that, I walked out of that stadium just giddy. Because, it feels like for the first time, they've got something that they can really build off of. How many times have they been able to go into the film room after a game and feel really positive about what they've done? You probably got to go back to 2019 when Aaron Crawford and Jason Strobridge literally never came off the field. And they were the only two dudes that really gave you a fighting chance. It felt like week in and week out. And people might say you're exaggerating if we go all the way back to the Butch Davis era because that's over a decade. But that's how bad Carolina's been up front collectively. They've had good individual players, and you've had good individual seasons, but it's never been as a unit. And the other night it was, you had 4 or 5 different guys that were chipping in and making plays, both as pass rushers, run blockers. They were getting off of blocks. They were being physical at the point of attack against an SEC front. For whatever that means after what the SEC looked like at different times this week. And so, it was really just a lot of fun. And look, man, we've been very critical of Tim Cross. And I'm not going to sit back there and walk it back because it's been justified. His position group has underachieved during his time at Carolina. He shut us up on Saturday. And now the challenge and the thing I'm excited to see going into this week against App State is how they build off of it. Because you're going up against an even more inferior line just in terms of talent. They've got a really good chance to really build some momentum, some cohesiveness, and become a defensive line that can be a force to be reckoned with in this ACC.
Yeah, that's what our guy Greg Ward says over on Facebook. He says now the question is this who they are, or was this a fluke game? I want to believe that it's not. I really think, you look at the guy that was the player of the game, Kamen Rucker. First of all, what an unbelievable performance from him. You talk about, the crazy numbers for the Tar Heel D-line just in general. Last year they had 17 sacks the entire season. Keep in mind, they played 14 games a year ago because they went to the ACC championship game. They already have over half of that production from one game. The 16 tackles for loss, that's already over 30% of the production that they had last year when they were one of the worst teams in the entire country in terms of tackle for loss statistics. And then you've got Kamen Rucker. Kamen Rucker last year, 3.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Not bad, solid, but he's already nearing those numbers after just one game. And I think, you look at him, a guy that's moved to a position that fits him a little bit better, I think that is going to pay big dividends for Carolina throughout the rest of the season. And you're seeing it with other guys as well. We didn't see him flash as much as some of the other guys, but Jahvaree Ritzie now having his one concrete spot, playing that 3 technique. I think that's going to pay off big for Carolina. Amari Gaynor, a guy that played linebacker at Florida State, now they've moved him onto the edge, and they're really allowing him to focus on playing at that spot. So I think the Tar Heels, they may have unlocked something. We'll have to still wait and see. But yes, I think one of the things that you got to do is credit the coaching staff. Of course, credit the players too. I think, they definitely deserve a ton of credit. But also, yeah, we've talked a lot about the struggles that Tim Cross has had. We've talked about him needing to step up. Is this the sign of him stepping up and saying, look, enough is enough? We got to get some things going in this room. I also think that, having a second voice in that room is very helpful as well. I think maybe that's exactly what Tim Cross needed. I think there are some good ideas. I think Tim Cross might be a guy that's, a solid motivator. He's a really good recruiter. We know that. But maybe you need a guy that is, a little bit more technical in terms of, being at the NFL level and being able to break things down for these guys. That's what Ted Monachino brought to that room. And I think you saw that effect on Saturday night. And, I just think, overall, not only was the defensive line really, really good in this game, I thought the defense in general, one of the things that we talked so much, and we harped on this in the instant reaction video that we put up that you guys really seem to love, and we appreciate you guys for watching that after the game. We talked so much about a year ago, this team falling apart, especially down the stretch when they were put in odd situations, when things would change. Sudden changes would just completely throw this team off. Georgia Tech, you have them going to Tyson Pumachan at quarterback in the middle of the game. Carolina can't adjust. The game against NC State, remember MJ Morris leading up to that game, they're saying, look, that he's going to be the starting quarterback for NC State. Carolina prepares that way. Instead, they throw Ben Finley out there. No game plan for him. Carolina falls short in that one. The game against Clemson, they go from DJU in the first 2 drives. They throw in Cade Klubnik. He goes off in that game because Carolina can't adjust. They, of course, get blown out. And then in the bowl game, you talk about, not even a change of actual player, but you had the shift, a pass interference penalty on Legend Cavazos completely turned the game after Oregon wasn't doing anything in the passing game. The pass defense had been tremendous to that point. There were so many chances for this game to turn the other night. Pretty much the entire second half, there were obstacles in the way for Carolina, and this defense, there was a chance for this defense to let the Tar Heels down multiple times. You had the onside kick that apparently, look, the chain gang affected the effectiveness of that play, right? I mean, they still came out and recovered it. I'm not really understanding how. I know your team went 4 and out after that and turned the ball over on downs. Maybe you were too busy watching the clock that was malfunctioning or something like that there, Shane Beamer. But I thought, that was a moment where things could have fallen apart. You have the 2 interceptions, and then you have the quick 3 and outs on their final 2 offensive drives prior to the one at the end where they, of course, take a knee and run out the clock. There were so many opportunities for South Carolina to get back into this game, and I thought every time they had a chance, this Tar Heel defense responded the way they needed to.
Yeah, because look, after the onside kick, that literally everybody and their mother knew was coming.
Including Mac Brown. They admitted that in the press conference, and he said it's on us because we didn't move guys up. So apparently that was a coaching mistake, something they got to get ironed out moving forward.
Yeah, and look, like when that happened and South Carolina recovers, I was ready to drill them because, we're scarred to think we're going to give up a touchdown. South Carolina's going to take control of the game. Here we go again, Carolina football going to Carolina football. Hell no. We showed Shane Beamer, look, there's a reason why your daddy and all of his gimmicks never won a national championship. That crap doesn't win, especially in the big, bad SEC. And so for Carolina's defense to stand up, when Drake May threw a god-awful interception, and it was god-awful, it was horrendous, for that defense to not surrender. For that defense to not cave when the referees handed South Carolina 3 points with 2 egregious penalties
That was the only points of the half. That's the only reason they scored was because of 2 penalties that were questionable at best.
Look, like a holding that was 75 yards away from the action, and then a unnecessary roughness penalty because, people don't like seeing people get thrown to the ground in football. Personally, I enjoyed it.
You said your dad was at home watching the game. Of course, we were in the stands. We didn't hear any whistle where we were sitting at. Now, we were sitting up high. Now, did he say that one was probably did he say that the play was dead and that's what led to them throwing that flag?
I take whatever my dad says with a grain of salt. He said that it was a warned penalty. We couldn't hear the whistle because I was going, woo, in the stadium.
That's why you got no voice. That's why you're struggling on this podcast.
But, this defense showed more, and I'm not joking. They showed more mental toughness in that second half than they've shown in the last 5 years because they didn't cave. They didn't fold. And that's coaching. That's them being drilled. And say what you want. You could almost convince me they practiced that crap where they practice sun and change and, hey, how are you going to respond if you go 3 and out? Drake's going to turn the ball over. He may be godlike at some point, at some time. Sometimes he's going to be human. He's going to make a bad mistake. But you can't go out there and screw it up. And they didn't. And so it was just really fun to watch because I think that's when I started to know something was different because I have watched this program for 15 years. And for 15 years, when things that happened on Saturday would happen, they would fold and they would cave. This group didn't. And, we've heard Mac Brown drill, we got to go from good to great. Hell, he said it on his on-field interview after the game. You saw it in the All Access show where they are drilling these guys about being better, about finishing. They finished on Saturday to the tune of 9 sacks, giving up, no rushing yards, only gave up 17 points. I had them giving up 20 and everybody thought that I was an idiot. So, they did so much on Saturday to prove everybody wrong and themselves right because Mac Brown's believed in them, even when they probably shouldn't be believed in. But that belief got rewarded on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think, a big part of it was probably that this unit they just got tired of hearing it from everybody, from Tar Heel fans, from the national media especially, that this just wasn't a good defense. I remember a podcast earlier this offseason that Josh Pate did, who does a great job on 24/7 Sports, the Late Kick podcast. He put up a clip of somebody asking him if North Carolina can be an average defense, do they have a chance to be an outside college football playoff contender? Now, I'm not saying that what they showed the other night, you should be saying or you should be booking your trip to one of the 2 college football playoff destinations. If you want to, go ahead. I'm hoping the same thing. I'm hoping we're there. But he said, look, there is absolutely no chance that's going to happen. He basically said, look, this is North Carolina football. Let's be real. So I think what it was is that, look, after a while of hearing that, especially when you've got the talent, I think guys just get sick and tired of hearing that. But the thing that's amazing to me is when you look at it, we're talking about the talent in these rooms. Look at some of the guys that played the best the other night. Kamen Rucker, 3-star. Elijah Huzzy, transfer from East Tennessee State. Like, we're talking about guys that are not the most highly touted players, but they're guys that play hard. And I thought that was really the difference for Carolina. Amari Gaynor was another one, a guy that was kind of an afterthought at Florida State. So much so that they started taking reps away from him and pretty much phasing him out of what they did. Now he comes to Carolina. And, who knows? He could end up playing in the ACC championship game against his former team at the end of the year, especially if Clemson's going to look the way they looked the other night. So I think you feel so happy for these guys. Like, yes, you clearly as a Tar Heel fan, you're excited just in general with the win. But I think the fact that it came because the defense was so good, that makes it feel even better, right? Because they were just – for so long, we were waiting for them to step up. I think we finally saw that. And it was a night where the offense was good, but not great, as Mac Brown was saying. Now, look, Defensively, they still got some things to clean up. Mac Brown addressed this. Gene Chizik addressed this in his press conference as well. They still gave up 353 yards passing. The good news is they did not give up a passing touchdown in the game. As good as Spencer Rattler played, he did not throw a touchdown. Carolina, they found a way, as we said, on that crucial drive in the second half. I think if they would have allowed a touchdown there, you really wonder if things would have been a little bit different. I think holding South Carolina to that field goal after the 2 penalties that they got gifted, that holding on Tayon Holloway that was called, that was on 3rd and long. He had Rattler had just given up on the play and thrown it away because no one was open to. So Carolina would have gotten off the field there again. But I think, there are still some things that Carolina is working on. Tayon Holloway is very clearly one of those guys that I think still has some work to do. But I think, as Gene Chizik said, a young guy that's still trying to get, used to playing at the college level, missed nearly all last year, trying to recover from the shoulder injury. And I think, you're seeing a group that has a lot of potential, but the fact that Gene Chizik isn't happy with the way that they played, still, was more focused on the stuff that they didn't do as opposed to what they did do. And I think Mac Brown, sort of emanating that as well. That's got to be encouraging that not only is, the unit playing well, but the coaching staff is still looking at this and saying, hey, there are a lot of other areas that we still have to improve in.
Oh, yeah. Make no mistake about this. If this happens a year ago, 2 years ago, I mean, they're getting praised and maybe building statues for that defensive performance. And look, Saturday was good. But we're not here to be good. We're here to be great because we got a generational quarterback that we're trying to put in a position to compete for a Heisman Trophy, get back to a conference title game, go to a New Year's Six bowl game, maybe see where the dominoes fall. And, I think that's something where we kind of noticed this on Saturday. There's a different energy around Mac Brown. He kind of looks like year one Mac, where he looks re-energized, motivated, hungry, because they got a taste last year. And I think they feel the burden of letting us down at 9-1, and the fan base really believing, man, 11-1 year, going to Charlotte with Clemson, who's even more so now regressed to the means, and we fell short of all those types of things. We didn't overhaul. We kind of retooled what we want to do, how we want to do it, and you saw the fruits of that labor beginning on Saturday, and so. That's going to be the thing, because you're going up against a inferior offense in terms of talent this upcoming week with a school that's going to play like a Division II quarterback. Like, there's a really good chance for Carolina to really build off of what they did wrong a year ago, continue to get confidence, continue to get belief. Because you go back to that 2015 defense that we kind of just want this defense to be like. The thing that group had, what isn't the talent that this team has? I mean, the talent that Carolina has defensively compared to the 2015 team. That 2015 could not hold this team's jockstrap. That's how much more gifted Carolina is defensively. But those players believed. They believed in what the game plan was and what the mission was, and that they were going to get the stops and get the turnovers, and that's what allowed them to be successful. Carolina's got the talent. I think they're starting to get the belief, and if it all comes together, maybe you were a year late on this being a top, 50, 75 defense nationally in college football.
I believe last year may have possibly been top 25. No, I don't think that was it. I think it might have been top 50. But still, yeah, I mean, maybe that's possible. And I think, look, we saw some of the recipe the other night. I think they're going to give up yards. I'd like to give up a little less. 353 through the air is a little bit much. I would also like to give up just a little bit less to a single receiver. 178 is not exactly something that you want to see every single week. But I think the other thing is look, you look at the depth at that cornerback position, and I know Elijah Huzzy now having to move to the star position, and we'll talk a little bit at the end of the podcast about the just odd situation behind, DeAndre Boykins being declared out for the season. But I think you've got enough talent there, and you got enough depth that if, let's say, Tayon Holloway just doesn't get it together, He's one of those guys that flashed in camp and did some really good things, but it just never really comes together for him this year. You got a guy like Armani Chapman who, wasn't great at Virginia Tech, but he's a veteran. He's a grad. He played 4 years at Virginia Tech at corner and was solid. You got him at your disposal. You've got other guys in that room as well, some young guys that, as the season goes along, could potentially take a step forward. So I think there's so many different options for Carolina that there's a chance that it could work itself out. But, back to what I was saying about seeing the recipe, you saw, when did Carolina really make their money the other night? On 3rd and 4th downs, those crucial downs where they needed to get off the field. They held South Carolina to 4 of 14 on 3rd down, 0 of 4 on 4th down. That's the difference for Carolina. We saw that at times late last year, especially in conference play, where Carolina would bow up on 3rd and 4th down and make plays. The question is now, can they do that consistently throughout the year? And I thought they did it even better the other night because, last year I thought there were just times where they got lucky and made stops. I felt like there was maybe one time. I know Amarian Brown, the slot receiver for South Carolina, did drop one pass where he was pretty open, would have been a big play on 4th down. I believe it was actually the drive after they recover the onside kick where he had that play. But outside of that, I thought most of the time on 3rd and 4th down, it was just Carolina making plays. I thought it was the defensive line getting pushed and getting pressure. Or guys in the secondary making plays. That was the difference for Carolina in this game, and that's something to be very encouraged about. Now you go to the offensive side of the ball, and look, we'll start with the positives there as well. I thought there were two that really stood out. We talked about the physicality that the defensive line played with. How about the offensive line? This was a huge concern. And now when you see the way that the defensive line played, maybe it was more about how good our defensive line was playing in camp and how good they can possibly be this year, and not a reflection on the struggles of the offensive line. They allow no sacks in this game. It's the first time that they've done that. Just the first time since last year. The 5th time since Mac Brown has returned to Carolina. They did it twice in 2019. They did it twice in 2022. And you could argue that this was probably the best that they did with this. I thought South Carolina, at times they were throwing some exotic blitzes at the Tar Heels. I think you saw it, that touchdown throw, for example, that Drake made to John Copenhaver, where Copenhaver goes through the defender and makes the catch. Had to throw it off his back foot. What a play by really both guys there. But, you saw that Carolina allowed less of those types of moments. South Carolina was trying to get exotic with some of the things that they did. But I thought, there was really a game plan, and you saw some good physicality. Willie Lampkin looked really good in his first game for Carolina starting along that offensive line. And the other thing was they lost a guy. Now, I don't know. I mean, you could say this is for better or for worse with what we've seen from him in the past few years. But they lose a guy in Ed Montelis early in the game. Jonathan Adorno immediately thrown in to basically a starter's role early in the game. And I thought that unit looked about as good as they've looked really within the last couple of years or so.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think, we were all kind of holding our breath, wanting to see what's this offense going to look under Chip Lindsey. I'm not going to go as far as some Tar Heel fans on Twitter saying he's already better than Phil Longo, because Phil Longo could put together an explosive offense. But you saw what the offense it needs to be this year, which is an offense that can control the line of scrimmage. You can run the ball. There was never a time in the game where I felt like Carolina couldn't run it. And if Carolina can feel like they can always run the ball like they did in 2020, Carolina's going to put up points and yards and put the team in a position most weeks to go out there and win. And I love the quick passing game because Carolina's got skill position talent. And tackling in modern football was bad. Get these guys in open spaces. They're going to break tackles and they're going to make big plays. And there's a lot to build off of, considering there was no Tez Walker on the field, no Nate McCullum. Kobe Paysour shows back up and just shows you, whenever he needs to step up, he's more than capable of. You got John Copenhaver involved. And you saw that even without maybe your two best wide receivers, they still scored 31. And that was with Drake May throwing 2 interceptions. That was with them kind of taking their foot off the gas for all intents and purposes in the middle of the fourth quarter or so. You know, they were still racked up a lot of yardage as well. And so a great first building block. And the thing I kept thinking about was, this is the offense Mac Brown wants, you know, because when he got hired, you know, he talked about what Oklahoma could do. They could run it, they could throw it. And Oklahoma's gone to multiple playoff berths, 1 Heisman trophies, 1 Big 12 championships. Phil Longo never even, I mean, outside of the year you had Javonte and Michael Carter, he didn't want to run the ball. And I get it, because you got, you know, at the time, a program-changing quarterback in Sam Howell. Now you got a generational talent in Drake May. It's easy to want to sit back there and sling the rock. But when you run the ball, it makes everything much easier for you to throw the ball. Let your passing game become an extension of the running game. And that's what happened at times on Saturday. And so for a guy and myself that was very underwhelmed with the Chip Lindsey hire, Saturday was a step in the right direction and believing maybe Carolina did not swing and miss on going and bringing in Garrett Riley, and maybe they got the right guy in Chip Lindsey.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's still very early to say that. Like, I saw some people last night that said Garrett Riley's offense is just not great. And shows, look, man, that guy went to a playoff last year. I think that if he was, you know, if he was coordinating this game, maybe things go a little bit different. You already know my stance on Cade Klubnik. I think last year he was a product of the fact that our defense was as bad as it was, and I'm still extremely skeptical about the player that he can actually be. But in terms of Chip Lindsey, I'm not worried about Garrett Riley. He went to Clemson, whatever, man. In terms of Chip Lindsey, I thought the game plan was exactly kind of what we thought it was going to be, right? They came out the first drive. Now, we were a little distracted, so we had to go back and probably watch that first drive over again, because we had a couple people just scrapping in the stands. I mean, talk about physicality. We saw a man go down about 3 or 4 rows, and it was a South Carolina fan that took that tumble.
Yeah, well, they got their asses kicked on the field and in the stands. It was a beautiful thing to see.
I mean, I got to tell you, the kid that was in the stands he said he was 18 years old. I'm like, bro, can you play on the O-line? Like, you've got the physicality. Let's see it. But yeah, no, I thought, you know, just overall, that's the game plan that you want to see. And there was a very interesting comment from Chip Lindsey yesterday in his press conference, where he said that basically this is how you have to win in the new era with the new clock. Teams that run the football are going to be so much more successful on offense, and it's really going to allow them to shorten games. And I think that's Carolina's strategy. Look, we're not going to be like Chip Kelly. We're not going to sit there and complain to, you know, people on the sidelines in the middle of the game about the fact that there's less time on the clock. Bro, coach the damn game. First of all, you're the guy that literally started running hurry up, so why don't you go back to that? Like, I don't understand that strategy. But I mean, I think Carolina, they wanted to be physical early on, run the football, establish it against a team that couldn't stop the run. And they did that. I think, you know, and you'll probably agree with me on this. I thought the offensive line was good, not great in run blocking, to go with along with Mac Brown's term. I thought there were times where they were really good, but I also thought that there needs to be a little more consistency there. We saw, you know, a couple of big gains that I really think were part of the reason why British Brooks finished with over 100 yards. And look, that's no slight against British Brooks. The thing was, there weren't a ton of running lanes. I thought there were also times where he was a little bit too hesitant. He probably should have been a little bit more decisive. But look, it's his first game back in over a year on the same field that he played his last game, where he really thought that his life was changing before, of course, he suffered the knee injury. So there was a lot of things that were going on. So I think this was a really good starting point, as you said. I think there's a lot of things to build off of. And, you know, yeah, you talked about some of the struggles. They throw the 2 interceptions, although, you know, the first one was definitely on Drake. That was one, held the ball way too long, then throws it back across his body. Come on, just throw that one out of bounds, live to see another down. I mean, heck, just even take the sack or just scramble and get back to the line of scrimmage. Whatever you have to do there, you cannot throw that football. The other one, I thought that one was more on Paysor. And I thought, look, Kobe Paysor, I thought had a really good night. Again, to go along with that statistic that I was telling you all offseason, he's now started 4 games. Guys, he's led them in receiving in all 4 games that he started.
Mamba mentality.
When he's on the field, it's tremendous. But I thought that one was on him. It went through his hands, and it fell. It just deflected right to the South Carolina defensive back. But then he had another one. He had that one, I think it was the next drive after the second interception that gets tipped up into the air and is almost intercepted. And so Mac Brown talked about how he didn't like how conservative Carolina got late in the game. But I got to tell you, I wasn't too mad, because I think that the thought from Chip Lindsey at that point was, hey, put it in the hands of our run game and our offensive line. Find a way to run the football, because right now we're taking way too many risks. I think that was sort of the strategy that he was going with, and I didn't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, how many times did Carolina be aggressive and still chasing points, come back and bite them? Because you were putting a tired defense back on the field. Because the thing is about, being aggressive is that it's no good if you go 3 and out. I mean, you can be as aggressive as you want. I mean, I'm aggressive on dating apps and I get rejected, so there's a reason to why it's okay to be conservative. And the biggest thing about the clock is, the teams that can run the ball is going to benefit. And you saw that on Saturday. Once Carolina could establish the run game, it felt like, okay, now we can shorten the game. And that's going to be a big thing for this team. Because in years past, when the clock didn't just continuously run, it was harder to shorten games. Mm-hmm. And now you're forcing teams to maybe start using their timeouts at the 5-minute mark to try to get the ball back, as opposed to the 3-minute mark. Because the 3-minute mark in the old clock was an eternity. And it's still a lot of time. But in college, it's not the same in college as it is in the NFL. And so I didn't hate it, because the defense was playing well. And it felt like for the first time, you were okay if the defense went back on the field. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many times we can say that. And, if that's the case moving forward, the Carolina's they're going to score their points. They're going to average, probably 36, 37, 38 points a game. But we've kind of been asking, like, as much fun as it is to see this offense put up 45, 50, 63 last year at App State, they were having to do it because they didn't play complementary football. The offense had to protect the defense at all costs. Maybe that doesn't have to be the case this year. Maybe Carolina can, quote unquote, live with playing games while scoring 31, 34, 38 points and still coming out victorious. So I get what Mac Brown is saying, where you don't want to get in that mode where, like, we're just going to get conservative, because it does cost teams games. But I thought on Saturday, just the feel of the game in the stands, it was the right move.
Yeah, and look, I think the other thing is, and this goes into Drake's performance as well, you had a quarterback that wasn't playing with his top receivers. Remember that they've been running Tez Walker with the ones, thinking that he's going to play because they're confident that he's going to win his appeal. They were using Nate McCullum. As far as we know, Nate McCullum's injury was not something that was an issue until really near game time. So we don't know when he hurt himself. So those are 2 of your top receivers that were out for this game. Now, unfortunately for Nate McCullum, I think to his detriment, Kobe Paysor playing the way that he did, I think Kobe probably proved that he's the starter in the slot, and that McCullum's going to have to battle to try to find reps, as either, a second slot guy or, just try to find his way onto the field in other ways unless Kobe moves to the outside. But I think, another week, now you're going to know. And after Thursday, they'll know on Tez Walker. Yeah. He's going to meet with, a second committee, which is separate from the NCAA, but helps the NCAA in these types of cases. And we're going to find out. So either he's going to be eligible and Carolina will know that. Drake May will have one of his top guys back from this offseason that he built a great rapport with, or Carolina's going to adjust without him. They'll know, hey, we don't have him moving forward. We're going to roll with J.J. Jones. whoever, Chris Culliver, he actually jumped Christian Hamilton on the depth chart this week. So that's something that's interesting to monitor moving forward. Whoever they're going to use out there, they'll know moving forward, hey, we have to find somebody else. And we'll see. So I think another week to be able to do that will be important. And I think will help this offense to take another step. Something else that would help this offense to take another step. And, we got a lot of criticism, and I definitely wasn't thrilled with the performance that I saw from him. But Gavin Blackwell, playing better, I think will help Carolina a lot. Not the greatest game for him, 2 drops. But I will say this. Look at some of the other guys around college football. We saw a ton of drops in the game last night from Clemson. Johnny Wilson, the star wide receiver for Florida State, he had 2 bad drops the other night in their game against LSU. So I think, the first week in general, I thought pass catching in college football in the first week, outside of the Colorado TCU game where pretty much everybody caught a pass, was not great. I thought it was definitely one of the odder things that we saw in the first week. So maybe you'll see him sort of settle in. And again, if not, that's another room where there is not a lack of talent there. At some point, if it's not working, people are complaining that Holloway and Blackwell are still starters. Guys, if they're not performing well moving forward, they will take them off the field and they will put other guys out there. They have the depth there. The thing is that they did something clearly in camp that has the staff excited. Look, especially first career start for Holloway, for Gavin Blackwell, I think it was his 3rd. You're going to have bad performances. And to me, it's better to have that bad performance in a game like we saw the other night that ended up being a win and a pretty big one for Carolina than to have that come in a loss. So I think there's still room for improvement for those types of guys. But, I think for the most part, can we say we're feeling pretty confident about all 3 units? Even the special teams unit, by the way, I thought played pretty well in this one. Ryan Coe hits a pretty big field goal for Carolina at the time. I think even that unit gave you something to be encouraged about.
Here's the thing I'll say about Gavin Blackwell. As frustrating as the drops in the first half were, and they were big, and they were going to be things that if Carolina didn't come out on the right side of things, you could have pointed at and say, how different is the game if he makes those plays? I believe it was 17-14. It may have been 24-14. Right at the time Carolina was taking control of the game, who did Drake May throw a deep ball to on a play action play? It was Gavin Blackwell. So even though he had dropped passes, not a loss of belief in his quarterback. That's a big thing for him mentally. Is like, okay, because you're going to drop the ball. It's just part of it. Even the greatest wide receivers of all time have dropped passes. But what makes, the reason why you're a wide receiver and not a defensive back is because you're going to catch the ball more often than not. And look at if he continues to drop it, maybe we'll just put him at corner to add to the depth in that room. We'll have to wait and see. But there wasn't a lack of belief in him and the play call to go to him, and Drake may have thrown the ball that he makes the play. The special teams unit, outside of the onside kick not being prepared for, how do you complain? I thought Carolina was adequate in kickoff and punt coverage. You made a field goal, something you didn't do that felt like the last month and a half of the year a year ago. And you look at the season openers for Carolina across the board since Mac Brown came back. This was as complete a performance you've seen from the Tar Heels in week 1, offense, defense, and special teams. They were very good defensively against South Carolina 4 years ago. You go back to the Syracuse game during the COVID year, it was kind of just an up and down performance because it was, COVID. We don't want to remember what happened at Virginia Tech because that was that was a nightmare and then some. And then last year, remember last year, as much as the final score indicated that Carolina dominated Florida A&M, it was a 1-possession game deep into the second quarter before a pick by Storm Duck really changed the way that game would unfold. So I thought, that was as complete a performance as Carolina has played in week 1. And it felt good to kind of see the team kind of bask in, the performance they put together, because more importantly than proving it to us, they proved to themselves we're capable of playing in big games, in big moments, and rising to the occasion and doing what we need to do. And now the goal and the challenge is going to be watching them build on that moving forward.
Well, that's the thing. Mac Brown said they're going to coach them like it was a loss, and they have to be able to handle all the hype that they're going to be getting this week, all the talk that they're going to be hearing about how good they played in that game. We're already seeing it. We're seeing people that are asking, is this a fringe top 10 team already? How are they going to be able to handle that? Because as we've seen, in years past, at times they haven't handled that all that well. Even back in that 2020 season, look at they were ranked 5th in the country. And look, there were teams that weren't playing during that time, but they didn't even handle that well during that COVID time. They go on the road and lose to Florida State, who is not Florida State that they are right now. And they didn't have a full stadium like they have right now for their home games. So we'll see how they handle, being touted the way that they are. Now, in terms of this win overall, where do you think? To me, this is the biggest win of Mac Brown's second tenure here. I know that game against Miami was huge. That's probably the only other one that rivals it. But this one, Carolina needed this one so badly, because if they don't get this one, you really wonder, what does this end up looking like this season? I know that, for me, I didn't think that it really spelled the end for Carolina. I really felt like it could have been somewhat like 2015 if it happened, depending on how it looked. But now we don't have to worry about that. Carolina won the game, and I feel like, this is something that can set them up for a huge season. And I'm pretty sure you feel that exact same way, considering that you said that this team, if they won, could be 10-0 when they head to Clemson.
Yeah, I'm still going to lean that Miami win being bigger because, it was a spot in a New Year's Six bowl game on the line, and it was – it was in Miami for whatever that means in 2020s, whatever, because it's not the Orange Bowl, which you went into Miami.
Hey, look, it's the same crowd that they have even with non-COVID. No one goes to their games anyway. So
yeah, and it was really the sign that they pretty much single-handedly ran Manny Diaz out of Coral Gables 3 years ago. The thing about this is the schedule sets up so beautifully for Carolina. You should win your first 2 games at home. Pitt is going to be tricky because Pat Narduzzi is a great coach. Carolina hasn't won at Pittsburgh since Mac Brown came back. You get Miami at home, you get Syracuse at home, and yeah, there's a legitimate chance to be to be 9-0 or 8-0 when Duke comes to town. And hell, after what happened last time, that could be a college game day site. But 10-0 going to Clemson is in the cards if Carolina looks the part like they did the other night moving forward. And look, I didn't think this team would go to Death Valley and win. You have a hard time telling me after last night this team with this quarterback couldn't go to Death Valley and beat the Tigers. And so, I would still lean Miami being the biggest win, but make no mistake, this is right up there. It's not a rivalry in the sense of because the South Carolina is not in the ACC anymore. 50 years ago, rivalry. And I think there was some animosity definitely in the stands between these two fan bases. If this happens more and more often, it will become a rivalry. But it was a big, game day in town, prime time on ABC, back in a stadium where you got embarrassed a year ago. And you flip the script. So, to me, Miami number 1, but this clearly the second biggest win of Mac Brown 2.0 in Chapel Hill.
Oh, yeah, trust me. After the other night, I think South Carolina may be one of those games moving forward that fits right in that same category with Duke, NC State. You literally cannot pick South Carolina moving forward because – my God, there were some – and look, trust me, some Tar Heel fans were going crazy too. The Tar Heel fans in our section, I know they were pointing at the South Carolina fans having started. I think both sides may have been going at each other. There were some adult beverages that I think led to that. That was some back and forth. But
here's the thing: it's not even just like the way that the fan base has interacted in the stadium. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and lie. We were a little mouthy in the stands with some South Carolina fans, but it was good banter. For me, it started with the way Game Day treated it like it was a game at Williams-Brice and in Columbia. It was a game day that was geared to the South Carolina faithful, and it sucks to admit that, the chotch that Pete Thamel was right, because the Gamecock crowd was out in full force for game day. You had a South Carolina guest picker in Darius Rucker, whose predictions were about as bad as his music was 15 years ago. And then you get inside the stadium, and it was 80-20 Gamecock fans. And, I mean, call me a coward, call me whatever you want. The Tar Heels became the first team in the history of college football to win a road game on a neutral site.
I said that to you in the stands. We're claiming this as a road win.
It literally happened. And so, for you, can you pick South Carolina moving forward? You have no choice but to, because, your disbelief allowed the win to come to fruition. But don't make no mistake about it. Like, I grew up in Gamecock country. I don't hate them like I did 10 years ago. We start playing them more often, and I keep going to those games and having to deal with those SEC wannabe fans. Oh, the hatred will return, because the Gamecock, and I'll make sure this is PG for the kids at home, the Gamecock love fest that I had to witness at College Game Day was embarrassing for a program that has literally accomplished less than I have in my life. And that's saying something, because I'm a pretty unaccomplished man after 26 years on this earth.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not a great look. And I think, look, part of it is that, for Carolina, I thought, there were definitely some loyal fans that showed up. I saw, a ton of people that I follow on Twitter that I know are diehard Tar Heel football fans that were out there at game day. They were out there early. They had their signs. They were doing their part. But they were, in the minority overall, the fan base. And that just can't happen. You got to have more people that are out there. We got the cool experience through our job, through, this logo. I'm trying to point. It's been a while. Through that logo down there, WFNZ. They, allowed us to go out and be behind the scenes at game day, which was a cool experience. You can't turn that down. And frankly, we weren't allowed to. They got us the passes. What are we supposed to do? They said, you're going out there, you're putting up content. But, I think it was a cool experience that I really wish everybody would have wanted to be a part of. And I hope, look, as you mentioned, it is unbelievable to say this, but there is a legitimate chance that if what happened in week one sort of pans out the rest of the year, they will be going to Chapel Hill for Duke, Carolina in football.
Yeah.
So, I would hope if it's in Chapel Hill, it's a much different showing and everything. And maybe that would be the case. But in this one, it was not a great showing from the fans. And honestly, the other part of it, not a great showing from the university as well. And look, I know people might get mad at this. The fact that the cheerleaders didn't show up until 10 o'clock, guys, the show started at 9. South Carolina's cheerleaders were there. Cocky was there. For the Tar Heels, the cheerleaders were nowhere to be found. Ramsey's was nowhere to be found. I didn't really understand what was going on. And when they rolled in late, I literally said to somebody, did they forget that the show started at 9? Did they think it started at 10? It just, that blew me away. So that's something, look, that's and that part right there, that's on the university. Let's get that cleaned up. This team showed you the other night. They deserve the support. I'm a dumbass. I didn't believe in them for this game. And they showed me. And maybe, I don't know, should I pick against them every week moving forward now? I don't know. If it's going to get them to go 12-0 and make the college football playoff, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But like the other night, yeah, especially, and the thing was, once you got in the stadium, I would say it was probably 70-30. I thought the side that we sat on, there were a pretty good amount of Tar Heel fans. But the thing that was concerning to me was, even though there were Tar Heel fans in the building, they're doing the intros. The team's coming out, running out of the tunnel. Everybody's quiet. They're sitting on their hands, whatever. And, you know, we had one of our Gamecock friends and a guy that's on the air that you can listen to along with myself on the board in the mornings. You know, T-Bone, who was saying, look, I was sitting in the Tar Heel section and there were a lot of Tar Heel fans there, but a lot of them just kind of going about their business. They're quiet until, you know, things start going well. Guys, you got to be loud right out of the gate. You got to be fired up. You got to be ready to go. That's the thing. That's the difference. That's what you saw from South Carolina fans. They were loud. Even when, you know, things weren't going their way, when the interceptions happened, all of a sudden that fan base started getting back into it just a little bit. That's the thing that you want to see from the Tar Heel fan base moving forward. And I think they deserve it. Couple of closing notes on the way out here, guys. We're just over an hour now, so we're going to make it pretty quick here. DeAndre Boykins, you know, this was just one of the weirdest situations that we've seen. If my phone worked, I would have put something up on the website about it at the time. But unfortunately, guys, I have the worst phone imaginable. My phone died 3 separate times on Saturday. So it was a miracle that we were frankly able to actually do the instant analysis of the game afterwards. This is one of the oddest injury announcements that I think I've ever seen. For it to come, and it probably came a little bit earlier because the update that we got was an article from Inside Carolina that I believe was the first to break it. I don't know, not sure if Tar Heel Illustrated got it first. I just saw Inside Carolina first before my phone literally shut down as I was reading the tweet. The fact that they waited as late as they did to announce that he was out for the season, part of it's probably gamesmanship. But one of the oddest handled injury situations that I have ever seen. And I know Mac Brown, his account at least, likes a lot of my tweets. Mac, can you do me a solid, man? Next time, can you wait till after the game to give me that one? Just throw that in there in the post game. I'd appreciate that. That'd be great. But it's a weird situation that the Tar Heels are now going to have to deal with. But the good news is Elijah Huzzy played in that spot nearly the entire night, as I thought he probably would. I thought that would be the game plan, and he looked pretty solid.
Yeah, I think you saw a dude that, you know, you could see why the staff brought him in and why they raved about him. You know, I made it well known during the preseason I was going to hold back my belief that he was going to be a quality piece defensively because, you know, there's, you know, doing at the FC level, at the FCS level is nothing to scoff at. But even when you come to the ACC, it's a big jump. The dude belongs. And it makes it easier when a guy like Marcus Allen can do his job. And Tayon Holloway is a guy that made mistakes but didn't get you beat the other night. So you can afford to keep him there. And that's the thing. You saw the depth, you saw the versatility, you saw the talent of that secondary really be on display the other night. You know, as much as you hate seeing a guy like DeAndre Boykins get hurt and he was given a virtual game ball, you're talking about a dude that gave the most yards in coverage a year ago. So it's not like you're losing this All-American dude, but he's a teammate. He's a guy that cares. He's a guy that you never question.
Good run defender. Good run defender too. That's a tough loss there, but
you never question the want to the desire. And so, but you know, this is a game of attrition. And unfortunately for this program, attrition starts in the preseason and attrition starts the day of the season. But Carolina was up to the task, and I thought they showed on Saturday that they're adequately built to replace the lost quote unquote production of DeAndre Boykins.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no doubt that he impacted the run game. I think that's the area that it probably hurts the most. You were hoping that he, of course, would take a step this year. And look, I think, you know, just like we were giving everybody, you know, their praise for what they did the other night, maybe DeAndre Boykins would have came out and played really well in the slot the other night. You don't really know. I think he had an offseason to grow. Last year was his first as a starter in a new defensive scheme. I think, you know, he had a lot on his plate. It's just, yeah, I mean, there was that was our thing. We were talking about him when we were saying there was a chance that DJ Jones could play, and he played a little bit and played all right. He didn't get beat. He made a play on one ball. I think that was a little underthrown, probably helped him out, but still looked solid. You know, this was a guy that last year was just beat over and over again in coverage. And that's the area that he's got to improve on this season. So I think while it's definitely a loss that hurts, and you'd like to have that depth there. At the same time, I feel like you've got a unit. I talked about the depth earlier that can handle this. And Elijah Huzzy the other night, the thing that you wanted, we were wondering what would he be able to do just at corner at the FBS level? What would he be able to do at the Power 5 level? I thought, he played really, really well the other night, not only in coverage, but I thought coming up and making tackles. I thought that was a huge difference for him too. So I'm really encouraged with that. You said that there are, of course, some injury issues. It always seems like that early in the year for Carolina. Nate McCullum missed the game as of right now, deemed to be day-to-day. Meanwhile, Ed Montelis, they said, will be monitored throughout the week after going down early in that game. Be interesting to see, what they do with him. But I think really at this point, what they'll probably do, even if he is able to play, they may start him. He's still listed as the starter on the depth chart that they released today. But if he struggles a little bit, they'll probably go to Jonathan Adorno, who looked really solid the other night. And seems like he might finally be taking that step in his third offensive line coach in as many years. So definitely some things that we'll have to monitor there. And then, of course, the Tez Walker situation, we'll be monitoring that when with everything that's going on. His hearing is on Thursday, so we will have a decision by then. And I know that they have said, look, there could still be other appeals that he could go through personally. Right now, this is kind of being handled by UNC compliance in association with him. Of course, he's involved because he's a student athlete. If he gets denied here, this according to Tar Heel Illustrated's Andrew Jones, if he gets denied here, that would mean that he would then have to go and try to pursue another appeal by himself. But at that point, you really just wonder, would he even worry about it, or would he just say, look, it's not even worth it, sit out the year, play next year? We'll have to wait and see on all that stuff, but we'll have you covered over on the website, HeelToughBlog.com. That's where we got the recap of the game. This man right here wrote the stock report. That's going to be his duties for this year. Ashton's going to get back in the mix as well to write the press conference takeaways. He could not write the press conference takeaways this past week because, Bud, I can't believe this. We're growing up really, really quickly here. Keep in mind, my Tar Heel fandom is older than your brother. This dude has a job now. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, 14 years old. And this miserable kid said, I'm going to go join the workforce. And I can't be more proud of him. It's going to pay off in the long run, because I told him when I was 14, I was well on my way to obesity and not in sitting on my butt
Still
watching
well
football.
On your way.
I was watching 12 hours of football at 14. I'm still doing it now at 26. Thankfully, I get paid to do such a thing, but he's going to be involved now that we're on video. He's going to be harassing us to get on here and talk, and he's going to want to share his opinions. And hopefully, if we allow him to do such a thing, he does not lower the numbers moving forward.
Well, look, we got to figure out. We're still a little bit new to StreamYard, so we got to figure out if we can get a third person in here. It could take a while. But no, congratulations on joining the workforce, man. Go make you a little bit of money. That'll be cool. That'll be cool, especially at the age of 14. But nah, he will be back. He will be writing some stuff for us, covering those press conferences that Mac Brown will be doing throughout the year. That'll allow us to do some other things. Also, cover a little bit more in depth those coordinator press conferences as well. So that'll be a big help for us over there. On the website side of things. Of course, preview will be going up. Going to try to get that one up earlier this week. Last week was just hectic. I mean, with all the stuff that was going on with the injuries, all the stuff that was going on with Tez Walker's situation, it just got so late. Then the internet connection out where we were at game day was straight cheeks. There's no other way around it. I don't know why I went with that phrasing there. Way too old to be using that. But yeah, no, I think we're hoping this week we'll be able to get that one up there for you guys just a little bit earlier. And of course, we will be back Thursday night, second live edition of the podcast. This one will be to preview that game against App State. So make sure that you guys don't miss that coming up. So for now, that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank everybody that tuned in live here. Want to thank everybody that's listening back on the podcast side of things. Want to thank Josh Marlowe for hosting with me. And of course, want to thank you guys once again for listening and watching. And as always, go Tar Heels.